Mike's Daily Podcast.
Episode 1358. 1358. I'm Mike Matthews, broadcasting from Café Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, Mont. Today, Shelley Shoehart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the engineer will get to the segment, the Mike Matthewsment Park, where we will take a little ride through the news. So much news going on today.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
And hey. What?
Mike's Daily Podcast.
I have a thing to sing about, but first, well, I have to say, you are worse off if you don't play with your fun podcast, my friend. It's okay if you got Google Play and it doesn't work right. I've been having issues.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
We have some other Google news we'll get to. Google was so happy to tell us all about
Mike's
their environmental
Daily
thingies
Podcast
today, which...
Yeah!
Oh, I lost that. Where did that go? So, like, you go to Google search and their little Google... What do they call it? Google Doodle? Says World Environmental Day. You click on it and you get their Google Environmental Report and greening the grid, how Google buys renewable energy. So look who just walked in.
Hello, Mike Matthews. It's Shelley Shoehart, gift shop supervisor. What?
Yeah, it says, in 2009, our data center energy team began to study power purchase agreements, large-scale long-term contracts to buy renewable energy in volumes that would meet the needs of our business.
Wow, Mike, that's really interesting.
Shelley, wake up.
What the, huh?
Look who else walked in. Oh, Mike, this is Floyd the Floorman. And this is John Deere, the engineer. Renewable energy is very important, Mike. Yes. Scary. In 2010, Google applied to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for a market-based rate. This is the most boring thing. Why would Google put this on? Well, we got some other interesting news about Google and Google Photos, which I use so much because there's basically, if you put it on this one setting,
And here's today's podcast picture.
you can upload 1 million podcast pictures and more, and it never ends. So they're going to do something different with that. We'll find out very soon during the segment, the Mike Matthews Mint Park. And by the way, I did a podcast yesterday, just so you know. I'm going to start doing them on Sundays. I've done it the past... Oh, wait, I didn't do it last week. I was so busy because my weekend job gave me so much to do. Here's the thing. They hired a new guy, a young kid, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of cute. Nobody in his family, I guess, sat him down and said, look, sometimes don't take the car to the mechanic if it doesn't run. Maybe it just needs gas in it. It's like the simplest answer to his question. He can't seem to common sense find it out, but maybe he will. It's his first big radio job, and he's all excited. Oh boy! And doing that drop right there.
Oh boy, is this great!
So, yes. This is the first day of the week where I get up at 4, so you can tell I'm full of energy. But Mike'sDailyPodcast.com is our wonderful website, where you can click on the Amazon link if you're going to buy anything, and that helps us out. There's also the PayPal. You can become an inglorious Mike's Daily Podcaster that way and get a special greeting from all the Café Anyway characters. There's also Condoleezza Rice. I was talking about her on the last show. I have a crush on her. And I saw her do a lecture. C-SPAN's been rerunning this lecture she did. Well, it was a question and answer. And she pointed out something very interesting. She said, in her advice to women out there, you've got to be, she said, and this is just a rule of thumb for everyone, all genders, and she said the following: you need to be twice as good You don't have to be, you can't just be good, you have to be twice as good. And I thought to myself, wow, that's why today's podcast is twice as good. And I'm doing it right now. You know what makes this podcast twice as good? Because I've got my smile. And that makes it twice as good right now. Yeah. So what you're probably asking yourself is, what else did Condoleezza Rice say? And what other interesting thing? Well, anyway, Café Anyway.
Anyway.
My friend Lady Katie, who I spoke to yesterday as we walked our dogs, she has malware and I have Basil the Boxer. She told me that she was at a salon, getting a pedicure in Palo Alto. And she says, you know, when I get a pedicure, when I have them working on my feet and my toes, I only go to the places I'm absolutely sure are good, because I don't want any, you know, funny stuff happens around the feet, and none of that. So she has this place that she swears by in Palo Alto. Well, guess who else swears by it? Condoleezza Rice. And Lady Katie was sitting there getting her pedicure done. This was a couple months back, and she recognized Condoleezza Rice. Condoleezza Rice, however, was totally into her smartphone, just staring away at her phone, creating a sort of psychological cone, a non-verbal cone of silence around herself. So that was the interesting thing about Condoleezza. I forgot to mention. And that Steve Earle, the country singer who sang that song Copperhead Road and Guitar Town, he sang a song called Conde, Conde, Conde about Condoleezza Rice. Did you know that? It was on his very anti-Bush album that was sort of the country version of American Idiot. But, you know, that Green Day had back in the early O's, mid O's. And he had his own awesome album that was very sort of subversive. But the podcast picture is of Basil the Boxer. And this was from Friday. And I mentioned yesterday that there you could see the Golden Gate Bridge in the podcast picture, and I was wrong. You couldn't. But if you had just gone around the corner, you could have. I forgot. It wasn't in the... So, hey, this picture does have Basil the Boxer. I know that for sure because I'm looking at it. And off in the background, it's in this part of Alameda, and there's this big sort of bay, and off in the background is this massive cover that was used for boats, and I think there's a plaque near here that talks about how this was a big wharf used during the war, World War II, and big boats were in this section. So Basil's on this little spot. It's so cute. Look at it. And this water in the Alameda. It's an Alameda picture. See it now at Mike'sDailyPodcast.com. Okay, now the segment called
Mike's Matthewsment Park.
The front panel will close automatically. Please remain seated at all times.
Well, there is a term called a get. And it's a big get when you get a big celebrity. Like right now, if you could get the Gal Gadot or whatever her name is from Wonder Woman on your podcast, well, that would be a big get because that's the biggest movie in the land, and it's broken all these records, and we talked about last show how it's broken all these milestones. Here is the biggest get, and that would be the lovely Megyn Kelly had on Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. He provided his perspective in the exclusive inaugural episode of Sunday Night with Megyn Kelly. Yes, NBC is going after 60 Minutes, and the gauntlet has been thrown down. And Heidi Klum wears a purple cutout gown. I noticed also on this webpage, but this show could be on AM radio, couldn't it? My podcast, this could be no. Megyn Kelly met Putin in St. Petersburg. A lot of plosives in that sentence. And the Russian president, it was his hometown and his nation's one-time capital, sharing a contentious discussion about Russia's attempts to hack the 2016 election. Putin, a former KGB agent, has been painted as the puppet master behind the challenge on November's voting. U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded that Putin ordered the disruption of the election. During the interview, Putin tried to dismiss the evidence, which he's been doing a lot of lately, by claiming that the U.S. has a history of meddling in foreign elections. He said, "Put your finger anywhere on the map of the world, and everywhere you will hear complaints that American officials are interfering in internal electoral processes." Kelly pushed back at the assertion, saying it sounded like Putin's attempt to justify his government's attempts to influence elections, and Putin demurred. Hey, I just thought of something. I heard a bunch of crazy white men, whiny white men conservatives saying that Megyn Kelly's career was in the dust, that it was over because of how she questioned Trump and really put him through his paces. And they were like, Megyn Kelly, oh look, she lost her job at Fox. She'll never be on TV again. And then she gets the biggest interview of the frickin' decade. So, hey, whitey white man whiners. I have one word for you, and that would be
Wrong.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, said Putin. I love that. I use that little logic thing all the time. He stole it from me. No, he stole it from the wonderful physics class that you took in high school. Or was it Einstein? He says, but I repeat, we don't even have to do that. Presidents come and go, and even the parties in power change, but the main political direction does not change. Putin claimed that Russia has a preference in an election, but only reacts to the political direction that the U.S. seems to be headed in. It wouldn't make sense for us to interfere. And then the conversation turned to the pre-campaign dossier that was purportedly collected on Trump. But Putin, who once worked as a KGB recruiter, hey, he was kind of like Comey. Comey was an FBI recruiter. They both were recruiters for organizations that had 3 letters. And Comey was speaking as an FBI recruiter when he found out that he had been fired from a television that was right behind him. But Putin said he had no knowledge of a dossier. Where did we get this information from? Why did we have some special relationship with him? We didn't have any relationship at all. There was a time when he used to come to Moscow, but you know, I never met him. We have a lot of Americans who visit us. Right now, I think we have representatives from 100 American companies that have come to Russia. Do you think we're gathering compromising information on all of them right now or something? Have you all lost your senses over there? All right, enough. Hey, the police investigation into London's latest terror attack intensified today in London as politicians officially resumed campaigning ahead of an unpredictable election that sees Britons going to the polls in just 3 days. Police carried out early morning raids at addresses in Newham and Barking, both in East London. They said they were connected to Saturday night's London bridge attack that killed 7 people and injured dozens more, including 4 police officers. The assailants have not been named. The police say they know their identities. London Police Chief Cressida Dick. There's a British dish called Spotted Dick, and that's all I had to add to that. Said that the majority of recent attacks have had a, quote, domestic center of gravity, although some of them, there are undoubtedly international dimensions to some of this. So, Christine Archibald, 30, a Canadian from the western province of British Columbia, was the first victim to be named. The 30-year-old had previously worked at a homeless shelter in Calgary before moving to Europe to live with her fiancé. On Sunday night, tens of thousands attended an Ariana Grande benefit concert that was originally intended to honor the dead from last month's suicide bombing in Manchester, but was expanded to recognize the newest victims in London. Well, back to Trump and Trump supporters. Riot police turned out in force in downtown Portland yesterday to maintain order as supporters and opponents of Trump faced off in dueling political rallies. It's really intensified in Portland, Oregon. And this was a week after racially charged killings took place there. The Trump free speech rally drew hundreds of demonstrators to a public square near City Hall, where a far larger throng of counter-protesters and onlookers massed on three sides of the park in a heated encounter that grew tense at times but remained mostly peaceful. And then the iPhone 8. There's a massive leak. And there are now 15 new features that have been confirmed. It's the most anticipated phone since the original iPhone in 2007. 3 allegedly... there's something, Reddit, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Number 1. Here's what they are. The new iPhone is called the iPhone X. It looks like the middle version is... Okay, so it takes up the whole screen. It takes up the whole frickin'... You don't have even that little round button at the bottom. It's the whole thing. There's a new dual rear camera with vertical alignment. So you're going to be able to take super duper pictures with this. The front bezel will be thinner on the Y-axis. If that meant anything to you, you're brilliant. Or a big Apple geek. And you and I probably don't relate on many levels because I am not. I'm so happy with my Samsung, but hey, I had an iPhone for a while, so I can kind of understand what's going on here. Test units have a Touch ID under the glass, but performance and yield rates were not good. No version is planned with a rear fingerprint scanner. And I'm just going to also throw in here the RAM remains at 3GB, like the 3 gigabytes like the iPhone 7 Plus. The aluminum unibody is replaced by composite glass. There's wireless charging via a rear panel. So they got that going on. It will be water resistant. There is no USB-C. Apple is sticking with Lightning, and production is indeed delayed. So there. And now on to the other of the, what do they call it? Fang. The big companies in the tech world. You got your Apple, you got your Netflix, you got your Google, you got your Amazon. Wait, what's the F? You got your Fremont, where I'm talking to you from now. Fandango? But Amazon filed a patent for a parachute packing label hybrid for their drone deliveries, meaning that future Amazon packages could float onto your lawn from drones. That's right, parachutes are involved. It was filed last Tuesday. It is a package delivery system that includes a parachute to enable the packages to be dropped from an aerial vehicle, yet land on the package's destination without damage. The parachute is apparently housed within the packaging label item. Oh yeah, so this is gonna work. If that parachute doesn't come out, there are so many ifs along the way here, isn't there? If the drone doesn't get knocked down by someone with a baseball bat, or a bird doesn't fly into it, or the drone doesn't crash into a pole, or a person, or lawsuit, or yeah. And then the parachute, that fails. Shoot. I see job security for all you male UPS people. Finally, the new archive feature recently spotted in Google Photos, which I was mentioning earlier, is now rolling out to all users. It has an extra trick. While the archive button lets you push more mundane photos out of the main photo display without deleting it. And these would be the mundane ones, like, and they list here scans of receipts, shots of a random tweet, or maybe a particularly personal photograph. There's also a new suggestion in the Assistant tab that will use its machine learning skills to find likely candidates for you. Hey, it will say, maybe you want to take care of put these in archive because these photos suck, and you'll go, oh, but that's my favorite picture, I took that. I like some of the enhanced pictures that it'll take a photo that you've taken and enhance it. It's very nice. I like that. As we go outside of Café Anyway, we're bringing Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley. I've used a couple for the podcast picture, but not today's. Today's is just no filter, Basil the Boxer, and fun. Well, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you for listening to it today, the Monday show. I think I'm much more awake than I was at the beginning of the show. That means the coffee kicked in. That means you gave me some of your life energy, and that helped me. Gracias. Next show, it's going to be Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, and the Brewmaster.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!